Jen.
Hi Hershey, we haven't started the video yet because we're talking about chili.
No, you mean like chili that you eat?
Yeah, we're gonna have a chili cook-off. You in?
Wow, I like making chili. Maybe. I don't know. It depends when. You're
Oh,
funny. I usually make it for the Super Bowl each year.
I can't see your face, Hershey. Are you gonna say off camera? It's okay if you are.
No, I'm coming on. I'm a planning board member. There we are. Ooh, weird.
You know what we can do is we can have an internal
Can you
chili,
hear Bill?
and then we can
Yes.
decide who makes the best one, and that can be donated to the soup event at Spring Hill.
Yes.
Think about it. Sure.
When is soup night at Spring Hill? When is that? Is that in the fall? Has it been
Yeah.
a year?
But I don't know what it is. I just know it's awesome, so.
Okay, so Bill's gonna get us the date for that. And let's look it up. And then we're gonna have a chili cook-off. That'd be awesome. Poor Greg's like, I shouldn't have said the word
No,
chili.
it's fine, that's good, good. Another one,
So funny.
A little burnt out, like I've gone vegan for a little while
Nice.
and I had like a high protein vegan chili that I was eating like times a week. You know what I mean? Yeah, I was like,
Doesn't matter how it is.
all right. I mean, it was good, and it was like, 40 grams of protein. Vegan chili.
Yeah, go right ahead. The mics will be on when they start.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, just turn it off.
it's okay. I just wanted to.
As long as the green light isn't on, I
I
don't
put on
think
the AC
it's picking up.
in here because it was stuffing when I got up here, so. So we have three members of our audience right now, Hershey. You probably can't see them yet. Thompson? Yes, that was me. Well, it's me, that's it. Yeah, no, that was me. You're so funny. No. Did you read it? Yeah, I did, yeah. I was like, oh, you're great. It was so funny. I thought it was hard. I was good. And you would have called me. I don't think I even. I don't know if I got my picture. It is not. Why am I bringing this back? Denise? Can you hear us?
Whoops, I have to unmute myself. I can't hear you.
That's okay. I just wanted to say hi. Oh, I never told you that. Hold it that way.
What?
Hold it.
I did start my video, but it's not working, so not sure what's going on. Or maybe because you don't have it on.
Hey, your video is working. We can see you and our video is on too.
Perfect.
Can
That's
you hear
awesome.
us?
Oh, I'm going by the computer time. You want me to start?
Yep.
Okay. All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday, September 20th planning board meeting here in South Berwick. Not much really going on tonight, fellow board members, but we do have a public hearing, and that's where we'll start. The public hearing that will be opening shortly is chapter 140, table A, which is the merging or conversation around merging of the I-1 and I-2 zones here in town. And so, if needed, we will impose a 3-minute limit. I'm not so sure we hit it that tonight. And I'm going to be refraining from reading all of the other proper etiquette. So I'll just say proper etiquette, no derogatory information, please will be shut down. So with that being said, we'll open the public hearing at 7 o'clock to hear from the public. Any questions, comments, or concerns related to the proposal to amend our ordinances, chapter 140, attachment 1, table A, in zones I1 and I2 or some equivalents thereof. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak to this matter? Yeah, please come on up. I will ask that you come up, state your name and your address for the record.
This is the 236 corridor, right?
It is, yes.
Okay.
I1, I2 is, the high school sits in the I2.
Yes.
And on the other
Pumpkin
side,
Town.
Pumpkin Town is I1.
Okay, Bridget Coat, 17 Quarry Drive. Okay, different line.
Yes.
17 Quarry Drive. I think I just would like a little explanation of what, there's some uses in the table that I think are already approved that I don't think are appropriate for that area. And I just want a little, like, maybe clarify what is in the table, especially medical marijuana cultivation and adult businesses.
Fair enough. So the actual differences between the I1 and the I2 zone are actually somewhat limited. And yes, medical marijuana, adult businesses, I believe trailer parks is another one, mobile home parks. There are a few others out there as well, but the actual differences in the allowed uses are somewhat limited. So what we're considering and seeking public comment on is whether or not there's merit in simply combining those to recognize really a higher level of need in terms of mixed use development. If something is allowed in the I1, why can't it be allowed in I2? There are some issues that do need to be discussed. But going back to some of the ordinance documents here, I was reading it before I came in here, the difference in the statement of purpose for the I1 and I2 are exactly the same. Because that's always something we want to go back and look at. What is the I1 trying to, the I2 trying to accomplish? There is no deviation. So looking to simply combine those makes sense. There are a couple issues that you've identified that I do think will probably come up when we get into our discussion.
Okay, so it is an approved use that could be there.
If it's expanded in its entirety, and the board ultimately makes the determination to say, hey, combine them carte blanche, yes. Those uses that are allowed in the I1 would then be automatically allowed in the I2. So what we're considering tonight is, do we allow that?
Okay.
We believe we're being asked, I think there's merit that the board had this conversation, that there is merit in the combination of them. But there may be some issues that need to be discussed about, maybe a couple items do need to be removed.
Yes, and
So,
I think it's clear which ones I
Yep.
don't want to see right next to the high school or right across to the high school. So I wanted to just come see what was going on.
Yep,
Yeah.
you're right on, and that's exactly what we're up to.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anybody else from the public? Hi.
My name, pardon me, my name's Lindsay Quinn and I'm the property manager up at Pumpkin Town Place. So I work for Tom Howarth, so I'm here sort of representing Tom and the Pumpkin Town development tonight. Merging those two districts would be huge for us as developers in that area because right now we have very limited use in what we can do up there. I completely understand her concern, but I assume those things would come up through planning board, what would be allowed and what wouldn't. We're just looking for more flexibility in our use of that area. So that's really, so I'm definitely for merging the two for more flexibility, but obviously the types of businesses that go up there are obviously gonna have to pen approval from the town as well. So I'm definitely for pushing those two together to allow different businesses to come up and for us to also look into having housing up there as well. Like I said, it would be huge to be able to get some housing onto that side of the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Evening, I'm Lynn Hatch, I'm at 13 Beaver Dam Road. I think I would like some clarification on what are the benefits. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Why would merging them allow for more flexibility? Why would merging the two zones together create more robustness in an area where there's significant amounts of young families, so I'm just curious about that.
That's actually a really great question.
Thank you.
Hey Denise. Did
Yes.
you hear the question?
I did. So in response to that, the primary motivation and, drive for merging the two, and it may be merging, but it may also be the planning board should be obviously considering other options like allowing certain uses or not. It's pretty much mixed use, allowing housing, because one district does allow housing and the other one doesn't. And so it's kind of, trying to support developers and landowners that are trying to sell their properties and develop their properties, crunch the numbers and give the community attainable and affordable housing, where in other areas, it's just not available in South Berwick. And so that's the primary reason. There may be some uses, you know, I believe it was Bridget, right, that spoke. You know, obviously, you know, the intent is not to have certain uses that people really don't want. But if you're already bordering a residential district, a zoning district, why wouldn't you want mixed use in the I zone, in one of the I zones that doesn't allow it? So that's primarily the concern that several developers, several landowners have come to town hall, met with me, met with Jenny McCabe, and discussed those concerns. And rightfully so. We all know that housing is extremely, extremely limited. Attainable housing is limited. So that's the aim and the goal here. Merging it seemed like the logical and the easiest low-hanging fruit way to do it, but it may not be the best option. You know, clearly if there are some uses that you don't want, and that's fine. But that's the motivation behind it. Thank you.
So just for further clarification, the board tonight will be deciding sort of that nuanced of what that may or may not look like if we choose to join.
Correct.
Okay.
Whether we make a decision at the end of the night. we
Right.
don't know.
Right,
We could push this to another meeting.
okay.
But for public consumption, I'm going through table A.
Mhm.
And first, the difference is in the I1 cluster housing, planned unit development, housing is not allowed where I2 is.
Okay.
We'll just go through these really quick. It doesn't take long because there are not a lot of differences. The next one down the list. That was written out, is going to be manufactured homes are not allowed in I1, but they are allowed in I2. Mobile home parks, not allowed in I1, but are allowed in I2. Multi-family dwellings. Are allowed in I2. See. Single family dwellings. On one, yes, on two. And primarily is regarding housing. And then there are a couple of those outliers, adult businesses are not allowed in I1, but they are allowed in I2. And the other one there is the medical marijuana. What do we call that one?
Medical marijuana cultivation and growing facilities.
Yeah, I think where is it?
It's under M for medical.
Yeah, it's on the second page of the table.
Under
Yeah,
medical, under M, medical marijuana cultivation.
Jenny, you have it open.
So it's
What?
allowed in I1 and not I2.
That's not on your thing, right?
What is it?
It is.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry, Greg, I'm looking at it, it must be an older version.
Sorry,
But
Greg,
Yes.
me-
Not
It's
in
in
the
your
other.
book. It's in your packet. No, it's right in front of you.
So
So
I'm looking at that one,
here,
thank you.
yeah,
And so can I ask a clarifying question in
Yeah.
regards to housing? If we're talking about zoning housing and making affordable housing available to families, is that also the duty of this board to say, okay, we're gonna maybe merge these and a portion of this needs to be affordable housing for families that are maybe underserved?
We have provisions in our ordinance that are going through the process that allow and make concessions, if you call, for affordable housing provisions, but I don't believe this board, under our current ordinances, allow us to say this will be affordable and these can be market rate. We can only go as far as our ordinances allow. In our ordinances that are currently under review at the town council level, suggest that there would be, density bonuses for those developers that want to, make housing affordable and meet those definitions. If they meet those definitions of affordability, then they can create more.
And so would this board wait for that final ruling?
Nope, that's going through.
Okay.
That's another provision that we were required to implement not too long ago under LD 2003. A couple of meetings ago, we made that determination. So we can't necessarily say you will create affordable housing. If the developer wanted to wait for those ordinances to be fully adopted, they could then use those provisions to create affordable housing.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I really hear people's concerns about this, and just one thing that I kind of want to clarify that I'm sort of learning as I go through this process is there is kind of a difference between affordable housing and attainable housing right now. And unfortunately, in South Berwick, we're not even talking about affordable housing. We're talking about attainable housing. There's nothing attainable for young people that are coming back from college to buy. So in my world as the developer, we're not looking necessarily for affordable. We're looking for our young people to come home and have a place to buy back here in town. And unfortunately, that's in the $350,000 range, which is insane. So I guess when we use the terms affordable housing, there's also to think about attainable housing, which right now is in between the market we're in and that the lower class population that we were just talking about, I feel like. So there is a definite need here in South Berwick for that.
Thank you. Anybody in Zoom wants to make a comment? Okay. Any further comments from Jesse? Yes.
Quick follow-up. If they are combined and all of the buildings, houses go up, what is the plan to look at traffic and the road? Is that part of this discussion with, it's a nightmare now?
My answer.
Yeah.
Okay, with the answer.
Go ahead. There are ordinance provisions that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jenny.
So it wasn't too long ago that our board took a look at this and took a look on how the traffic actually there. And took a look at the setbacks in those zones. And this board already just recently reduced the setbacks in the I-1 and I-2 zone on that corridor down to 40 feet. And it used to be 75 and now it's down to 40. And naturally, as we develop and build closer to the road within that setback, it will calm and slow traffic naturally. There's been tons of traffic studies done. We all know that. This board has done a nice job to help that. We can take it a step further, maybe later, when signs start going up for all these businesses and whatever that are coming to town. You're gonna see it different. You truly will. But we've already sort of handled that problem.
Yes.
It's always gonna be a
always
problem,
is,
but we're gonna keep working with it as a town and board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so as the development grows, we always pay attention to the ordinances,
Yeah.
but it's going to place a higher priority on certain provisions than where we can require traffic studies
Yeah.
and third-party reviews and that to make sure that we're not being because it's naturally going.
Yeah, okay.
Any further public comment? We'll close the public hearing at 7:13. And with that, we will move into our regular meeting and I'll ask for those that are willing and able to rise for the pledge of allegiance. Great, thank you very much. And moving right down, is there anybody here in the public? Before we get into our other business, is there any additional public comment on anything that's not on the agenda? Anybody on Zoom, wish to make any comments to the board?
I'm all
Yeah.
set.
Okay, thank you, Denise. And for the record, Aaron, I'll recognize you as a voting member tonight. I don't think that's intended. There's no changes to your status, correct? For a full membership, no?
I have put in a request.
Oh, okay, so we'll
It's
still
not-
recognize you as a voting member, okay? Okay, is there anybody who already said that? Now, let's move on to the meeting minutes. Has anybody looked at those? I know these been here on the agenda for quite some time. We know if we have the ability to act on those yet.
We should have the ability to act like last week.
9-6, but I still don't think you can act on 5-3, and I'm gonna contact our town attorney and ask how we handle the 5-3 minutes at this
Yeah.
point.
Okay,
Perfect.
so is there a motion on the 9-6 minutes?
I move we accept the 9-6 minutes.
Okay, then moved. Is there a second? A second. Any conversation?
I think Janet mentioned it before, but on line 13, Greg Zinder's name's misspelled.
Yes,
I think you already mentioned that.
yes,
Okay.
thanks to Denise. She found
Thank you. We'll do a roll call because we have a number here via Zoom. Kirsty, I'll start with you.
Aye.
Hey, Eric. Hi, Bill.
Aye.
Greg is aye. Motion passes. No new business. Moving on to old business, public hearing discussion. We're going to combine those. So for public consumption, I think just to add some additional understanding or context to the zoning, I have some thoughts of my own regarding a couple of those uses. But really, I think what we're trying to do here is create a mixed use development. And so I want to put that in context. What does that mean? And what does that look like? And really, at the end of the day, it's a combination of housing and retail uses and mixed use. And so I'm going to look to Denise. Can you point out anything in the local area? I do know that Berwick right now, where the old tannery used to be, for those that are kind of questioning mixed use, if you go to Berwick, the old tannery, that's a mixed use development in Wilton. So that's similar to where this could potentially be headed. But can you maybe just put that in context, give someone like a visual example, Denise?
Sure,
Thank you.
I mean, front and center is your downtown, your Main Street. There are residences right on top of the block building. And then you have businesses on the bottom. And the bottom line, and if you could imagine also Aubrey's, that complex there, that's right there in Punkintown. If you can imagine all the businesses that are below, completely retail, residences on the top, that would be mixed use residential complex. You have it, you just have it in different pockets, and being able to crunch that. And then there's also, I'm not familiar enough with the Berwicks and the North Berwick and what's going on there, but when it comes to mixed use, you can actually have duplexes and multifamily housing in proximity of a master plan development, for example, that would have housing as well as retail proximate to that location. But you have to allow it. And so like in the I-1 district, it's not allowed. And so the developers that have the capability and the landowners that have the capability in that district to do that cannot. And that's where the predominance of the new development is going to be happening. That's also in the new transit-oriented TIF district. So I think one member of the public was concerned about traffic. If any of these developments trip, and sorry for the long-winded answer here, but if any of those developments trip the traffic movement permit or the TMP that is required, then they have to put in the modifications to Route 236 to accommodate that traffic. And so there are ways to take care of all that. I hope that explains a little bit of what you were looking for, but
So what's the board want to do? I see a couple options. One is a general discussion has been to combine them and call them mixed use. There are some other alternatives. I have some concern that if we just say, take the I-1, I-2, merge them directly, I believe there could be some uses that could pose a problem. One of those is we went through, for those that were aware, many, many years of marijuana discussion here in town. I would not want to see us opening that door, so if we look at a combination to condense them into a single new zone, I would suggest we then create an overlay zone for marijuana cultivation, keeping it within current I-1. Seems to me to be a little complicated. I think an easy way to do this, look at table A. The number of actual differences between I-1 and I-2, not much. Maybe half a dozen or so. You know, I think we keep the zones the same, I-1, I-2. And, you know, as far as adult businesses go, keep those in the, you know, in the I-1, or let's see here. Those are currently allowed in the I-2. So that's an interesting. We want to give that some further consideration. And also keep the medical marijuana within the I-1. But I think everything else could be just simply moved from the end, the guest. And that would then essentially merge the districts without undoing everything. That's an avenue. So one is to merge everything, call it a new district, let everything happen, not change the use and just hold them all together. And the other is to just right now, probably go through the ordinance and just say yes or no to the uses. I would personally encourage the board to stay away from the marijuana discussion, keep it where it is. That was talked about quite a bit in the adult use. I would be fine with just saying no for us. For, I mean, adult use business establishment is currently allowed, you're saying, in the I-2. That's the school side. Now, there's other requirements in terms of you gotta be X number of feet away, right? So it's not just be right next door to the park.
In terms of the high school, it's not that far, like downtown, you know.
Well, no, it's the I-2 is the high school zone area.
Yeah.
The I-2 itself is not a huge district. You know, I guess what I'm saying is, I want to hear from the other board members. I think we can do this. Those are the two issues that I see, that we just want to be careful of.
I tend to agree that it might be simpler to keep them separate, but allow additional residential uses. And then not have to mess with the differences in the medical marijuana. I did have a question for you, Denise. What do we?
Hell, please, go ahead. I didn't hear.
I was just wondering, as far as developers go, what do we anticipate? I know originally this has been presented as sort of a mixed use opportunity, but we would also be opening this up to single family and duplex. You know, we're looking at opening this up to single family and cluster development, all heavily residential in nature in an industrial zone. Do we have any idea what kind of, what's the percentage that people are looking at as far as that as an option for developers? Open that, either of you guys, yeah, anything to answer there.
So, okay, so the short answer is that area is, there's a lot of area that is undevelopable or pretty close to undevelopable. The numbers wouldn't crunch for single family homes. It would be unaffordable. I mean, the goal here is to be able to create some housing mixed with compatible industrial uses, and the developers, they know that certain types of housing will not work in that area because it is primarily industrial. So it'll self-fulfill its own prophecy, if for lack of a better word. And I truly believe that the developers and the landowners that I've been working with are clearly wanting to have tangible financial benefit to having housing along with industrial, because industrial alone and commercial, the numbers won't crunch with that land area. And if they did housing alone, it won't crunch in that area. And so the appropriate compatible development is what's going to happen in that area. And I, you know, to Chair Zinser's comment, merging may not be the best use, because there's unintended consequences if you start looking at cannabis and you start looking at adult business. So I think taking a look at the uses piece by piece and trying to approve, what works in both, what could work in both is probably the most logical and compromise, a good compromise for what is needed in that area for development. And I think obviously talking to a developer directly is probably the better way to go as to their concerns and their reasons why they have been meeting with me. And I invited several of them and thank you to one of them for coming tonight. But the plan here for them is that they can't move any further with their development unless they have some of these modifications, which is to the benefit of the community.
Go ahead, Hershey.
I agree with you, Greg, that we should do this piecemeal. Because there only are a few changes, and then let's just discuss those changes. And in fact, I'd be in favor right now of going through the list, deciding which ones we should just leave alone, like adult and marijuana. I'm with you on that. That was a long and arduous, battle for everybody. Let's just leave it where it is. There were a lot of compromises on both sides. Why rehash that? And let's focus on the few that we are intent on changing and have a discussion about just those. So would everybody be okay with that? Let's just go through the list and make a note about the few that we actually want to debate.
Yeah, let's do it now, get it out of the way, because we're really not talking a lot of items here.
Right.
And you get that done and see a potential final version at our next meeting for adoption.
Okay, so, and you've already started adult business. Let's just leave it where it is, right?
Yeah, I actually do want to talk about adult establishment and just ask and request that town staff can tell us what the requirements around that are. Go ahead. Distance away from the schools. Right now we're saying it can be in the I-2. That's the school. Go ahead.
I have this feeling, Greg, that you have to have it somewhere. I have this feeling that it's not legal to ban it outright, and that a town has to afford it some space, and we just get to designate where it is, which is why it's there. But we could also flip that and put it in I-1 and not I-2.
Yeah, I'm good with moving on. We'll leave it right now where it is. Go ahead, Jen.
Want me to answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
1,000 feet.
Then it's understood. Okay. In terms of the property lines, in terms of where the school is, 1,000 feet from that, it almost wipes out the entire thing.
Exactly, I just wanted to tell you.
Yeah, fair enough, yeah.
Sure.
Well, I didn't talk, go ahead.
I did understand that, but I didn't want it, because I knew it's 1,000 feet, but that's a different story on the other side of the street, so, thank you.
Yeah, no, we agree. So we're gonna keep adult use where it is, moving down the list. The next change,
Did you have anything else to note there?
oh, go ahead. Yeah, I think you're done.
I just want to add something,
Go ahead.
and I want to add something about the housing portion of this. And this is for Bridget. It's not really. I think that the board, this is a great topic, this is a great discussion. I'm really happy with the way this is going. However, I think when we talk about affordable housing, we talk about attainable housing, we talk about mixed use, we might want to consider adding some design standards or that mixed use housing, and that's all I want to say.
We don't currently have a design standards, do we? No,
No,
that's a whole other topic of conversation.
but it doesn't have to be decided with this change. It's something that should come down the line when we do our ordinance upgrade.
Yeah.
Upgrade, and it's more than just this zone, we should talk about it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Next one, moving down the list, I'm on page 1, cluster housing and planned unit development. Do we want to say in the I-1 MSP?
Can we decide that that's one we should have a discussion about and set it aside and just keep moving through?
What?
I was going to say I think there's going to be 3 of them that we're going to want to talk about in depth. And this is one of them. So I would say let's move past it and agree on all the rest and come back to the housing ones.
Okay.
So just remember that cluster housing.
Yeah, so you want to come back and have a further conversation, or
Yep, that's the one I think we should talk about.
we can talk about that then.
Okay.
Moving on to page 2.
Medical marijuana is the next one, Greg, and I suggest we leave it where it is.
I agree with you.
Manufactured homes is before that.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I miss one? Oh,
Yeah,
you're right.
Correct, manufactured homes, no
Let's-
I, major site plan and I2. We want to just say MSP on that too.
I think that's housing, so I think we should just put that in the housing bucket to discuss all at once.
So are you,
And the same with mobile home park. Anything housing wise, I think we should have one big discussion about all of those.
So the only two that are not housing related are the adult business establishment and the medical marijuana, and the rest are all housing
Is the
related.
rest all housing related? Multifamily housing is the next one, right?
Two family, mobile home park, manufactured homes.
And actually, I would say for two family and single family, I would leave those as is and discuss, multifamily housing more to the point. But, people can disagree.
so I'm not really following where you're going with this.
I think it's all about housing, and there are several categories of housing we could discuss. And I want to have one big discussion about all of those different choices. And I'm happy to leave everything else the way it is. And I think two family and single family, I don't really care what happens to those. I'm more interested in the multifamily and cluster housing, blah, blah, blah. So, and the mobile home parks and manufactured housing.
So we're agreeing to leave adult business where it is, medical marijuana where it is.
Yep.
And everything else and every other difference.
Is a housing one, it seems, right?
I mean, it sounds like where the developers are coming from, like single family, maybe even two family dwellings are sort of a non-issue anyway, because it's not feasible. So even if they were allowed in all districts, we're probably not gonna see single family development, like homes getting stood up in that area anyway, so it almost doesn't matter.
Are you looking
Yes,
to?
I agree.
Are you looking to further define housing and only put allow certain types in there?
Well, I think that's the discussion we need to have next about, and I think Aaron started to discuss, in an industrial use, what kind of housing is appropriate. So, and I'm not sure that's I'm not sure where I land on that one, so.
So just for example, then, when we're talking single family dwelling, are you suggesting to say continue with the no?
I would, but yeah,
So are you looking to focus in on, multifamily duplex?
yes,
Town style? Okay.
yes. Right? That's what we're left with, right? Multifamily dwellings, mobile home park, manufactured homes, and cluster development, yeah?
So do we need to do a vote, line by line vote on these? Or do we just-
No, I think we should have a discussion, see if we come to an agreement, and then we can vote the whole thing at once of what we're changing, what we're not.
Yeah. So again, we're leaving the adult business where it is, we're leaving single family where it is, we're leaving medical marijuana where it is. Now we're down to like 3 or 4 different types of uses, all related to housing. One of those is cluster housing. The other is manufactured manufactured homes. The other one is
Two family dwellings.
yeah,
I don't care about those either. Those can stay where they are.
family dwelling.
And mobile home park. Okay, we skipped over that one.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
town staff would like to comment on this.
Go ahead.
Denise is, asking to comment.
oh,
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you. My hand raising capability is not working. So back to Hershey's comments, I completely agree. I think this is a great conversation to have and to do the housing separately. I think the way that it's written right now currently with what's defined and in the ordinance, it basically says, you know, cluster housing, mobile home, and I think it defeats the purpose of why the original intent was to actually have mixed use. So I wonder if we should have you consider adding one other category called mixed use and part of a master, you know, major site plan or planned development, PUD of sorts, so that that element is taken care of, because what they're trying to accomplish is not defined in the ordinance as it exists. So you can approve cluster housing, you can approve multifamily. And I agree that single family dwellings do not belong there. That's not the point of this. But there's nothing that really defines what these developers are trying to do. I just wanted to throw that out there for conversation.
Like the downtown area, forward, or
Yeah, is there, how are the downtown areas defined in Topco right now for the mixed use?
Well,
Is it currently allowed?
There's no dimensional requirements. So if you want to build to they can.
I think if I can,
And I.
go ahead, Jen.
But I think what Denise is trying to say, instead of going through this
Yeah.
or whatever, just putting mixed use as a category and just defining it in every zone, either.
Yeah,
like, get, you know,
right,
Why
and so I probably would wanna see like a definition of what mixed. What would that look like? I mean, because again, we would add that to table A,
you have to.
keep all other uses, keep everything where it is essentially. And add a brand new use.
You have to define mixed use.
Right, and we would have to,
You
so
can
we
do that.
need a definition and we would want to have some conversation about that. And Hershey, that can probably pick up. the
Correct.
multifamily, the, you know, duplex type approach, townhomes, that could probably, mixed use development would probably pick that up. And that would be a use allowed in the I-1, I-2.
I got one for you,
Go ahead.
Hershey. Tell me if you like this one.
Make me happy.
That's
I
fun.
noticed, I'm gonna try. To provide more than one use or purpose within a shared building or development area. You can add to that, but that's a good one.
I actually think a definition is simple as saying you have to have a retail or commercial use on the ground floor with residential above, which is typical. And in a cluster development, we do allow, I guess what you call a commercial complex, which is what we have up on Pumpkin Town Road already. And you could sort of revise that to, it could be scale, so you could still have some retail within a cluster development or a subdivision somehow. And a good example is, if you go out to, I think it's Stark Road and Patty B's in Dover, they've built about, I think, 8 apartment buildings there, all with retail on the ground floor to create, I'm not sure it's the most successful little village because it's pretty big and spread out, but that's exactly what that is. And West End Yards, I think it is, in Portsmouth, is similar in that big apartment buildings, lots of housing, but retail on the ground floor for pieces of it that are closer to the bypass. And,
Hershey,
you know,
I have a better one for you, ready?
okay,
To provide any one use or purpose within a shared building or development area. Mixed use projects may include any combination of housing, office, retail, medical, recreational, commercial, or industrial components.
that sounds
That-
good. I can live with that.
And then we would add that new category and say yes, and I-1, I-2. What would it be if we were to add that new category, which I think that you described it actually all encompassing, which is what I believe the intent of what we're trying to accomplish here, which makes sense. And I agree with Hershey, the West End Yards, academies that have been there, that is what this is trying to accomplish. And that really is the modern zoning, frankly. So I think that's a great idea, but if we put that into table A, I'm gonna look to those on Zoom right now, Denise, Hershey, or others. If we do add that as a use, if we don't address those other issues, again, multifamily, cluster development, manufactured homes, are we creating a conflict? And would we want to then say no to those in that particular area? You know what I'm saying? So, you know,
No, but then you've just hamstrung people to this one type of development, and that gives you no flexibility at all.
Okay,
So, you know,
Yeah.
Can I ask, I'm sorry, was it, I don't remember the name, who, the woman who's representing Tom Haworth? Are you, can I ask you a question or two?
I can try to answer, sure.
Okay, so, attainable housing is sort of a new made up kind of idea.
Mhm.
Is there any actually explicit definition of it besides we just hope people can buy a house?
Well, honestly, it's just that the market right now, it's just that people that are in their thirties that don't have the credit scores that some of us older folks might have, or the buying power, have sort of been locked out of this market.
I totally
Um,
understand.
You know, Tom has a couple lots down on Lord's Lane, and we have, several other lots in Elliott. The Elliott lots are priced over $1 million, and the Lord's Lane lots were priced under $1 million, but the houses that are being put there are close to $1 million homes in South Berwick. So the
Okay.
people that are choosing to move here to town are building I'm getting ready to build a $650,000 home plus the land. Now we're close to $1 million.
Okay. And why
So,
isn't Tom gonna do that on I-1 or I-2?
well, this is what happens over here. This is on Lord's Lane. It's our only option. It's residential. It's our only option is single family homes. We've got 3 lots there. That's what we can do. Our third lot, we're holding out to try to do more of a apartment, multifamily on the third lot. Because again, we don't want to this is my issue. I'm the property manager at Punkintown Place. It's so great that we have Aubrey's and we're bringing people to town to go to Aubrey's, but there's nobody that can work at Aubrey's. I'm really looking to bring people to town that is going to be working at the coffee shops, not just frequenting the coffee
Okay,
shops.
so so let me ask this.
Yeah.
So Tom didn't price any of his lots under market rate, right? So why
Those-
would we assume that any
This-
housing he develops on
lot-
I-1 or I-2 be under market rate?
The lot was at market rate. The
Right.
people who chose to buy that lot have now
Right.
decided to build a much larger home than we just designed for that lot.
Okay,
we
but I understand who bought it, but my
Yep.
question is, if Tom didn't price the lots at he priced them at market rate.
Yeah,
So it doesn't sound like, why would we assume that any housing he builds on I-1 or I-2 wouldn't that also be priced at market rate? Wouldn't the
so,
rents be market rate?
so a couple different things. There's more than just Tom up on the hill. So Tom has Punkintown Place with his partner, which is only 2 lots. We've got a room for another building up there. There's another developer that's behind us who has not done anything yet. I have no idea what he wants to do. As far as Punkintown Place is concerned, that's really all I can talk about regarding the I-1, I-2, because that's really all that's in I-1, I-2 right now. Is that for us, we have issues with public water up there. We're having issues with sewer up there. We can't break ground up there because of the ledge. For us to move forward, we need to be able to have other options for development up there. So if you're asking about whether or not, and this is something that we had talked with Denise about in the beginning, there is opportunities for Tom to work with the town to talk about, we're only going to build houses that are going to fit this price point for this market. He's very much open to that. The point is that we can't literally break ground up there because it's not cost effective to do so, to build another 40,000 square foot building to bring
Okay,
more commercial business.
That's fine. So say we change this ordinance and Tom can now do residential. We have absolutely nothing that compels him to build anything but market rate housing up there. There's no ordinance. You said you got up and you talked about attainable housing and affordable housing, but there's absolutely nothing that
Well,
regulates him doing that if we
Right.
pass this ordinance.
Build anything.
No.
We're doing allowable uses. And the thing is, right now, the construction methods that are allowable up there are not affordable for your average people. If we have the option to put in a mixed-use property where you can have income from retail at the bottom, and condos where you are using the same amount of land, instead of that, it takes much less, so the land costs are cut in half, the construction costs are way down. The housing itself, no one's gonna pay the same thing that they would for a condo, that they would for a single family residence. Like none of my clients,
right.
you know, inherently by the very nature of the housing, even though it is to be further, it's gonna be priced at market rate, I'm sure. Most most people who are in this are selling it at market rate. You're still making it more, if
Exactly.
not, making it actually, affordable housing, under the strictest revenue
But-
definitions.
I completely agree, but the nature of the housing that's up there, it's gonna put it in a certain price point, and that's what we're looking for.
I think, also, I think, the changes that we made in LD 2003 are adopted. There would be some incentives there as well to enhance that, so perhaps there may be something that we need to look at as well, to maybe apply to.
Really, Greg, I think LD 2003 is not gonna have any effect on this, because this is gonna be about multifamily housing, and that's really limited to a density bonus that has to do with, I think, like 3 or 4 units being 6 units.
So. I'm not so sure we're gonna come to a conclusion tonight, but I think perhaps at this point, if we were to see a definition for, mixed use at our next meeting and see what that looks like on table A, I think then we can have that further conversation. Is that an agreeable method to move forward, leave everything else where it is? Go ahead, Jen.
Before you answer, can I just say one more thing? When deciding how to classify mixed use in our ordinance, you should try to mimic what we have in commercial center and commercial complex, because that's kind of what the downtown follows do. And that's kind of what I want I to follow. So Pumpkin Town is a commercial complex. That's how it's defined in our ordinance. So I just want to kind of clarify that before.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Somebody just have to be there. And we just simply expand it.
And I still would like to, if we're gonna, that's what we're talking about, we're doing this next meeting.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna make any decisions tonight where I don't see it going there.
I still would like to find out more, because it sounds like everyone's probably coming to an agreement for the mixed use properties. I would like to find out a little bit more about from you, Denise, and from any other developers that want to, if we need to address something like the cluster, developments, or if we're just looking at the mixed use for this section.
Well, and then I don't disagree with you. Again, we came into this thinking, combine everything, just combine everything.
Right.
And this will solve all the problems. But now, it's, no, keep everything where it is. Don't change anything, but add a new use.
Right.
And so it's changed a little bit, and I personally have no problem with adding a mixed use category. I think it's the way to go. I'm in favor of that.
I guess my question is more about, I think, it sounds like people are coming to agreement that we don't really need to expand the single family,
Right.
to the other side. My question would be about looking at we need to expand multifamily and cluster, in addition to the mixed use. And this is just an open question to any, to you, Denise, to any of the developers that might be interested in developing out there. If that is also something that would, people are looking into, I think.
Well, under the original assumption, when I came here, originally when this was brought up, combining of the lots or the zones would solve that issue. It would all, sorry.
I'm gonna just take this one second.
That would automatically allow the cluster developments to go into the I-1 and I-2, because basically what we were saying is combine all those uses.
Right.
Which I think is part of the issue, with don't just combine them all. What about if you don't want adult business, you don't want to change marijuana?
Right.
So then now we're here at the mixed use. Do we keep everything where it is and just add a mixed use category? Or do we say to all these things, if we add a mixed use, do we still need to address cluster housing? Before, I'm not saying we were all in agreement. What I'm saying is we were all thinking, hey, combine lots, which means cluster housing would be allowed. Do we change the N? No, it has to be major site. And so I'm fine with adding a new use, but we also need to look at those other uses as well, and maybe change those.
Yeah.
Again, why would we hamstring people for additional housing opportunities?
Okay, I just need to jump in here real quick, because I'm trying to say, I want to say, I'm envisioning, like, when I'm hearing mixed use, what it sounds to me like is kind of like in Dover where build a new apartment complex downtown. And first floor has to be retail, commercial of some sort. So I'm picturing first floor is retail, second, third, however many stories above are homes, apartments, something like that. So none of the housing that we, and this is, maybe we talked about this already, none of the housing in here addresses that. So but it also sounds like none of the housing options in here is what people want, put in I one or I two anyway. So if we can borrow and steal from, you know, the Dover definition or whatever, with mixed use means first floor is retail, commercial.
It's not always, you have some of the like, you know, there's not, it's not exclusively held to the, first floor, if you look at like the Dover, middle buildings.
Yeah.
Where you have, you know, apartments on the top floor, but there might be some attorney offices on the second floor and stuff like that.
But whatever that definition is, we don't
Well,
have
yeah,
to,
yeah.
you know.
Right.
We don't have to.
And can I
reinvent the
just,
wheel.
hey, Bill, can I point, actually, I'll point out to everyone, you know, that type of building, right, where it's retail on a ground floor and residential above is really something that you see in places like South Berwick Center or downtown Dover, or in places where perhaps you're creating this entire new little city, but it's all about keeping this sort of urban edge, and that they don't want you to build housing in downtown South Berwick that goes right to the street and then ruins whatever commercial sort of vibrancy you originally had. You know, putting that kind of type of building in the middle of nowhere by itself with downtown retail isn't really what that typology is about. So not that I'm against it, you can do it if you want, but that's not really what it was meant for, right? That is a type of building that goes in a city center. And it was
So-
all about making sure you continue to create sort of a commercial use on a ground floor throughout a city.
And I'm totally on board with that. I understand that, but I guess, like, what would you envision mixed use being in I one and I two? If not that, and maybe it's not like, hey, the office is, commercial has to be on the first floor and everything else. What would you envision a picture perfect mixed use building looking like, layout wise?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Oh, I don't actually envision mixed use in that zone because I don't see, it's not the purpose of that kind of building. You know, like, I guess you could say, I don't know, I want a corner store downstairs so I can run down and get something, but to me, it doesn't serve the purpose of why you would have that kind of building. Like, you'd be better off just building all housing, right? It's not like they're going to put, I don't know, like a little supermarket in maybe, or something that's a convenience store. That's the only thing I can imagine that would be useful to people who live there. But you're not creating, a lot of that is about creating a kind of 24-hour vibrancy, right? So that when you don't have just residential and people go home and then you have this dead area, or you just don't have commercial like a financial district where everybody works, but there's no residences then to patronize businesses. But that kind of typical building is really a kind of, you keep this urban edge around commercial. So I don't actually envision that kind of building there. I could see putting housing there. I could see putting all sorts of housing there. But generally speaking, you know, we all live in a place where people get in their cars and go places to buy things and do things. So, you know, you could put in office uses. You know, when you drive into Dover and there's and you're going, let's see, you go down Portland Ave, you take a left on, what is that? To go around the loop, you know, and there's that sort of newish building they built, and they pretended to put commercial on the ground floor, even though it looks exactly like the residential areas. Like, to me, that's a disaster, right? Because nobody walks there. So nobody cares that there's retail there, and they would have been better off just making it all housing. But the city insisted, Dover insisted, because it's sort of within their city zone, that it had to be retail on the ground floor. But they, you know, and they allowed then the architect and the developer to make it look like it was housing anyway. So to me, that was like the worst of both worlds. So.
Yeah, all right, go ahead, Jenny.
All right, also I wanna say is you can even take this a step further and make it even more simple. What we could do is, instead of adding mixed zones, we could take commercial center and commercial complex and the definitions, and we can beat them up and teach them. And what does that look like, right? If we wanna allow residential, instead of putting in a whole new table, only whatever, keep what's there, keep up the definitions. And I think it would serve the same purpose as what we're trying to accomplish here, without getting in the, and that's it, that's all I wanna say, and Denise has something she wants to say as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Denise.
Trying to, now I've got 2 points to address for Hershey, but
Please.
the one that is, I did find like what attainable housing definition is, okay? So it's a new term, and
It
it
is.
basically states that attainable housing is one that is affordable to people earning around the area median income. So rather than an LMI, so it's area median income.
Right.
Households living in attainable housing and earning between 80 and 120% of AMI should not need to spend more than 30% of their income on housing costs. So it's a new phenomenon. I learned about it just when we did the market analysis. I have not been made aware of it. And then in response to mixed use housing, mixed use complexes that don't work there, if we are going to expand development along Route 236, Punkintown is directly across from the high school. If I was an AMI person, I probably wouldn't mind living in a residence in that area, being proximate to a school and expanding that area as a new center, not the downtown center, but a new center. I mean, the transit-oriented TIF district, for example, traverses all the way from the border to the Elliott border and encompasses a lot of capability for economic development, which includes everything from mixed use to just basically commercial and industrial. And so I truly believe you have no room for infill. Seriously, in the downtown.
You're right. You are right.
You have no room. So I
Right.
hear you, what you're saying, and we need to encourage, like, for example, if a residential dwelling goes up for sale, maybe it's something I do. I talk to the realtor and the homeowner and say, look, have you ever considered, because you're in a business district, selling your property for residential and business development? Lawyer on top, housing on the bottom. Who knows? But anyway, there's no infill capability. Therefore, the only infill is to develop outside pods of commercial, industrial, business development, and residential. I guess that's all I wanted to add.
Okay, so I guess what I'm seeing here is going into this and combining the I-1, I-2 uses is really not what we're trying to accomplish, I guess, at the end of the day. Really what we're, I think, for purposes of this conversation, that probably is taken off the table, but we should be looking at expanding the definitions of existing, for example, commercial center, commercial complex, expanding and beefing up those definitions and expanding those uses into the I-1, I-2, which they're already allowed, so we probably just need to look at the definition itself. Or we have a new category, mixed use. And Jenny, you gave us an example earlier on that seemed pretty all-encompassing. That seems to be where this is going. So going into this, I'm sitting here initially when I got here tonight, we're gonna be talking about combining these because without hearing from the lady here, I have no idea what's going on. Someone wants to do cluster housing, or someone wants to build multi-family housing, and they want to do it over here next to, Punkintown. But that's not really the case. I think we're really talking about a brand new use. And that use can be either outright stated mixed use with a definition in those two areas, or we expand the definitions of those other uses that would appear, at least on paper here, to be similar. I think that's where this is, where we are at this point. So agree or disagree, I don't know if we need to have a philosophical conversation on this one, but I think that's kind of what I'm seeing as we try to narrow down the issues that we're trying to solve here. Is there kind of general agreement on that approach? And should we just say, for purposes of tonight, let's look at those definitions commercial center and commercial complex, look at what they are, because those are already allowed in the I-1I2. And also look at a brand new use called mixed use development, with a definition theoretically being allowed in the I-1I2, and let's just see what that looks. Let's have something that we can physically look at and react to, because in that definition that we're looking at, we may all just, yeah, we don't want to see that. As, you know, let's kind of see what we're physically talking about on paper before we take it another step further. Because we all can look at that and say, yeah, no way, no. So maybe just looking at this one step at a time. And saying for this I-1, I-2, the original assumption of just combining really wouldn't accomplish where this conversation is going. And so just adding a new use and having a discussion on that would probably be appropriate for that. Did everybody generally agree on that? Great. Hershey?
As much as I could hear that, yes, I'm happy to discuss the new use.
Okay.
So I think Denise is looking for flexibility, as is everyone who owns land there. So I'm not necessarily objecting to the other uses either.
Yeah, I'm in favor, just right now, I'm in favor of mixed use. I just want to see a definition to make sure we're not just going to say we're going to allow it. I want to know what we're allowing. I agree with the concept, so I'm happy to move forward with that, and I will spend some time myself, and I would suggest you all do as well. Look at the other definitions of those other uses, because just an expansion of one of those definitions may be all we need. And so I'm going to look to Denise and Jenny and say, is that something you could help with as well? Just look at that and give us a breakdown, and I think that's probably the best way to approach this rather than combining the districts. I think you're just looking for new flexible use. I agree. And I think if we get something at our next meeting, we can probably move that along pretty quickly.
So why don't we do this, Mr. Chair, if I
Yeah.
can, why don't we, create a definition for mixed use?
Yep.
Show it in the table,
Yeah.
and why don't we also, we'll work on beefing up commercial complex, commercial center. You guys can see it both ways and see which one you like, and if you wanna add to it or change it, that's your
Yeah.
choice.
So, but before we move, I'm good with that approach. I think that's a good method. We've narrowed it down quite a bit. We'll modify definitions, make the change, we'll add a new use. I think we're all generally on the same page, and we'll discuss the detail at our next meeting. But are we also in agreement that we're not, as originally contemplated, we're taking the I-1, I-2 combination or melding the uses together off the table, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'm great with that. We have a clear path forward. Let's do that.
So real quick, I would be more in favor of the new mixed use versus beefing up commercial center, commercial complex. Justin, I can see that maybe having some unintended consequences downtown, so I think we make a separate one specific to these areas. That makes more sense to me than changing what is working for downtown.
I agree with you 100%. I just, staff brought that up, and I wanna say, maybe there's something there that we're missing, and also pose the kind of a little bit of the opposite. I don't disagree with you, Bill. Maybe those definitions need to be updated in general, right? I mean, good Lord, they're probably 40 years old. So, I think that goes back to our conversation from months ago, where we're going to be looking to the council for professional assistance and redrafting the whole damn thing. So, it needs to be updated. So are we all good with that approach going forward? At our next meeting, we'll put this back on and have that narrow discussion on mixed use in the I-1, I-2, and whether or not the commercial center, commercial complex could be modified successfully.
I think we should also address, if multifamily. Needs to go into, be expanded to the other ones.
Yeah, so I think any other housing options that you want to expand, I think we can incorporate in there in the mixed use. I'm in favor of that, yeah. Let's be as broad as we can to give us the most flexibility as possible. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So what would the board like to see for mixed use, for a table zone? Does I-1, I-2 on the next meeting? I just wanna make sure it's clear we do it the correct way.
So I would say, my perspective would be, keep it to the I-1, I-2, keep it narrow at this point. I think if we bring in any of the other districts, I think we're gonna be biting off more than we can chew. I
Agreed.
think that would be well received at this point. Let's keep it to our original intent, which was originally looking at increasing housing opportunities in the I-1, I-2. So putting mixed use right there for the purposes of keeping it narrow is probably the way to go. If we want to expand it in the future, that's another conversation.
My only concern about that is I don't want to create a specific definition for mixed use and accidentally disallow it downtown where it already exists.
Well, then maybe we'll expand it.
So that's my.
But that's why we need to also look at those commercial center and commercial
Yeah.
complex, because those may need to be updated in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those would then be specific, to, the B1, B2, and in the I-1, I-2,
Yeah.
But we want to maintain the character of each of those areas too.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
that's my point about the definitions though,
Right,
because the definitions of commercial center, and commercial complex allow it in the I-1, I-2 zone,
Right.
but it also allows it in the B1, B2 zone
Right.
downtown.
right.
And I'm not sure you're not gonna be able to
Do
put
one
B1
without
and
the other.
B2 in for a mixed use because it's already allowed there.
Right,
That's my only, unless somebody sees something I'm not seeing, but that's,
so listen, I think we need to do more work on this in general. I think there's general concurrence that there is a willingness to look at the mixed use. Let's just get a definition and then figure out what we're gonna do. I can absolutely see it going in the I-1, I-2, maybe it's more, I'm fine with that. But again, for the purposes of why we were here, it was the I-1. Yeah, so. I'm just thinking of future conversation, and if we put it in the I-1, I-2, maybe easier as opposed to, introducing new uses in other zones that may not be very well received.
Oh, no, I was only referring to the zones where it's already existing. I don't want to disallow something that's, if we specifically say this is the definition of mixed use. But then say it's not allowed where it already exists,
Right.
I don't want to cause problems.
And so maybe those other definitions need to be modified.
agreed. Agreed.
Does everybody, I'll just ask this, do you, Jenny, and do you, Denise, understand what we're asking?
I do.
Okay, just want to make sure that any questions. Because I'm not entirely, I think I understand what we're asking, I don't necessarily know if we're all on the same page yet. So if you want to give us some ideas, we're good to go.
No, I think this is a great solution. I really, really do. I think it benefits the town and I think it benefits the developers and the landowners that I've worked with. And the key here is to get more young people and people wanting to move back here. And I would even be bold and to go so far as in the definition is to make sure that the developers understand that it has to be in the attainable housing level of, and then that's a little prescriptive and bold for the town, but it basically means there's a commitment for not necessarily just affordable housing and market rate housing, but housing that people can actually be in. And but Jenny and I will talk about that and we'll present both options. And that's a discussion for you folks to have to help in the housing area.
All right, good. Started one place and ended up at another. Any other?
That's always good.
Actually, a really good.
Public conversation always helps solve problems, right?
Any other conversation on this item? Okay, any member comments? Oh, Aaron, were you raising your hand?
Oh, I was just see if there's any other comment.
Oh.
I think Bill was gonna tell us what the soup thing was.
Yeah.
What was that?
I had
No report on it.
fully invested here, I'll take care of that later.
All right, seeing no additional comments, motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
And roll call, Hershey.
Aye.
Aye. Bill. Aye. Greg. Aye. Meeting adjourned.